This is Joyce Tice. It's May of 2016, and we're talking to Sheila Brown Crittenden, and she's going to tell us a little bit about growing up in Mansfield in her time. What are some of the first things you remember, Sheila?
Well, I remember walking to school from out in Richmond Township, and we walked to the elementary school, which was brand new the year that I started kindergarten. And
Which building was that?
The Rattan Center.
Okay, the Rattan.
It was beautiful. We had a beautiful big kindergarten room and all kinds of equipment. A wonderful white-haired teacher named Miss Scott, whom we loved. And my now husband got sent to the office the first day of kindergarten for chewing gum. He was supposed to spit it in the wastebasket. He went to the wastebasket and didn't spit it out.
Pretended he did?
Yes. And so he got called in the office, and when he got home that day, his mother, who was a devoted educator, was heartbroken that her first child on his first day of school pulled such a trick.
That's a funny story.
Anyway.
I hope it got better for him.
Well, yes, it did. But
so you had to walk. I know where you used to live. That was really quite a little hike.
It was quite a little hike for somebody in kindergarten and first and second grade. It was cold in the winter, and they didn't have the kind of insulated boots and coats and things they have now, so it was a trek.
You were hardy.
Yes.
So you went through kindergarten there. What are some of the other things you remember about elementary school?
Well, Dr. Rattan was the principal.
That was George.
Principal. Yes, George. And we were scared to death of him. Of course, he was tall and very serious, and when we'd see him in the hall, we would just shrink, And he had this gorgeous secretary whom we assumed they were in love, and just
you made up stories.
Yes. But just a few years ago when I read about him and his life, I thought it was such a shame that he didn't have any relationship with the children at all. And yet...
Very distant.
Very. He was just all business, and very unapproachable. Then, of course, later years when we realized that we were kind of guinea pigs because it was the model school. We were the practice kids,
all of Mansfield we were practiced on.
And there were those rooms, or those closet-like rooms in the back of every classroom that had copper-colored screens on them, observation booth. And teachers and administrators and parents, anyone could go in there and watch us, and we couldn't tell they were in there. And after we realized what was going on, we all kind of felt a little...
Intruded?
Yes.
I remember the observation booths in the junior high. I don't remember them in the Rattan.
I don't remember them in the...
Junior high?
Yeah. But it was quite an experience having student teachers like we did. We loved some of them. Some of them were very good, and Dick fell in love with all the pretty ones and wanted to marry them.
All the little boys did.
Yes.
And the little girls fell in love with the men.
Yeah. But then junior high that was different. The floors creaked, and you could always hear Miss Bigsby coming because, she had very bad arthritis, and she clumped down the halls, and so she couldn't sneak up on you anyway. But she was a wonderful teacher. She would, if you didn't understand a math problem, she would sit down at your desk with you and work with you until you understood it.
Really?
Even though she was very strict, but she was a really wonderful teacher.
Well, that's interesting because I've interviewed a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of different stories. Most of them people were pretty afraid of her and so on. But I've heard a couple of very nice tributes. Les Evans thought she was wonderful.
Yes. Well, if you wanted to learn and, you wanted to behave and you wanted to please the teacher, she was with you.
So tell me about high school. You had quite an active high school career. You were active in a lot of, you were cheerleader.
I was a cheerleader in junior high.
Oh, okay.
But I couldn't turn a cartwheel, and
Ah.
so I didn't go out for cheerleading. But to graduate from high school, you had to be able to turn a cartwheel in gym class. I mean,
Well, I'd still be in high school.
yeah, right. We had a fabulous gym teacher named June Terry. We loved her to pieces. And she finally just kind of was real busy right at the time that
Didn't
I
look.
had to turn the cartwheel.
Look the other way.
Yes, because I was an honor student and
Right.
everything else, on the Honor Society. And
That's an incredible criteria for graduating.
yeah.
It's not academic.
No. So June Terry died quite young with breast cancer, and we were devastated when we learned about it. She had moved away and gotten married and had children and so on, but
Uh-huh. So what else what else were you active in high school?
I did a lot of, like, if a term paper was required, I wrote a book. I loved school, and now people like my husband, Dick, he made stories up, went up to Mrs. Hughes' desk, told the story, made up the author's name, and he got an A, and here I read a book like the size of Gone with the Wind, and I got an A.
Wait, so he's quite a salesperson. He's quite a persuasive individual.
Yes. And we were in Mrs. Straight's history class, and he wanted to be out living. He didn't want to be in school, like 95% of boys are. And at that time, we'd gotten pretty serious, and we wanted to get married eventually. And so Mrs. Straight, whom we loved, called me in the office one day and said, "Tell me, what is the reason that Dick can't seem to, pay attention to this history and get good marks and so on?" Well, I was on the spot because I didn't want to say, well, he's just not smart enough to do it, because I wanted to marry the kid guy.
You didn't want to admit that.
So, but he was interested. His father had a big farm. They had purebred cattle, and he loved that life. And he'd stay up all night plowing and planting or raking hay or whatever. And he just...
A different focus.
Right. So he barely got through. Chemistry was a disaster, and Mrs. Young was going to fail him and not let him graduate, yes. So the night of graduation, there's all the diplomas up there on the table, and his wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Well, I was frantic, so I chased her down in the hall. Graduation's in a half an hour, and
you begged?
Yeah, I did. Begged, pleaded, threatened. So he graduated.
So she did let him through?
Yeah, she did.
Wow. So you're quite a persuasive person too. So
but Mrs. Bigsby was the secretary in
Ruby.
the office, yes. And she pretty much ran the school, so you best stay on the good side of her.
Oh, I remember her.
Yes. And Miss Gleckler, I loved Miss Gleckler.
Wonderful woman.
Yes. She even gave me a graduation gift.
Did
and
she really?
Gave me a wedding gift.
Did she really?
And then when she passed away, I was in her will that I could go in her house and choose an antique of whatever I wanted.
Where did she live? What house did she live in?
She lived on St. James Street, about 2 or 3 houses in from...
College Avenue?
No, Route 6.
Oh, okay.
East Wellsboro Street.
Okay.
Right across from the side of the Episcopal Church.
Okay. All right.
Little
Yep.
house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I know exactly where you mean.
Yes.
Well, yeah, she was a teacher of my father's too, and yeah.
We loved going over to Strong Auditorium for special programs. That was a big deal when we were in elementary school and even junior high. We'd go over there for special things, and Well, of course, the college was kind of a big, mysterious place to us. And that walkway, what do they call that?
The arcade.
The arcade, that was fascinating.
Yes, it was kind of charming.
Yes. And then we had recess in front of Belknap.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down in the basement of Belknap during bad weather and played war, where there's two sides and you have a volleyball, basketball type of ball, and you just throw it back and forth, trying to hit each other with it.
We used to play that too. We didn't call it war. Dodgeball. That's what we called it.
I guess it
Dodgeball.
would be, yeah. And we went up to the junior high building. The home ec classes from the college did lunches there.
The cafeteria.
And it was a la carte, so you had to be able to figure out if you had money enough for soup and sandwich and milk and maybe a dessert. Well, I've never been good at math, and I was petrified every day that I wouldn't have enough money to pay for my stuff, But
Well, that's there's a good point there because, so much of what's put on the trays, if it's, the whole thing gets tossed out. That way, if you selected it, you're more likely to eat it.
Right, yes, and we did. The food was very good.
Was it?
Miss Ferrar was the professor in charge of that program.
Marian Ferrar.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. She was a lovely lady.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and Dick always wanted 2 sweet rolls, and she wouldn't let him have 2 of them.
Well, that's good. Who were some of your? We just have a couple minutes left. But who were some of your good friends in high school and elementary school?
Marjorie Broderick and Jimmy Edgerton and Johnny Bauer, Walt Sherman. And then the kids came in from Mainsburg and Roseville. We made friends with them, Joyce Frost, Wanda Priest, and Dwayne Seymour.
Mm-hmm. And some of these people still live around here.
Yes. Elaine Robson, she's my cousin, Marilyn Bullard. And, of course, those kids just sat and watched for the first year because they'd already learned everything that we They were a year ahead of us.
Is that right? From Mainsburg or Roseville or both? Both? Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Very interesting.
It is.
I mean, here we were the model school.
Right.
Teaching teachers how to teach, and then the kids come in from these 2 little tiny villages, and they're a year ahead of us.
Wow, I didn't know that. I don't think we had that experience in my time. I don't recall that.
Of course, there were 8th grade exams then, and everybody was petrified of those, but they were no different than the other achievement tests that we took. Oh, and we had a great library in the elementary school. Beautiful library, and Miss Palmer was
Bertha Palmer.
She was about 4 feet
Yes,
tall.
I know. I remember her. She was such a tiny little woman. I mean, I'm short, and I think she came up to my shoulder.
Yeah. And the boys, of course, would go in the back and look at the National Geographic magazines.
The naked Africans.
Right.
Right. Well, thank you, Sheila. We've enjoyed hearing about your growing up in Mansfield. Some things stay the same and some change.
Right, yes.
Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure, yes.